Lucía, inicias tú, ¿verdad? El webinar.
Sí, yo inicio.
Okay, so I'm good to go, Pamela?
Welcome to the Our World Heritage 2021 debate. 2021 debate is a year of events focused on protection, conservation, and management of World Heritage. We want to uncover untold stories to broaden our views on heritage practices and future perspectives. Knowledge gathered this year will be published in 2022 on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Convention. The Our World Heritage Initiative is created by individuals working on 100% voluntary capacity. We would like to point out that Our World Heritage provides an open dialogue platform that is based on voluntary work of session organizers and speakers. Our World Heritage welcomes diverse viewpoints in the spirit of collegial debate where mutual respect is afforded to all. Please note that the expressed views do not necessarily reflect the official position of Our World Heritage. We thank today's speakers for telling their stories, and we thank you, the listeners, for your kind interest and questions. If you want to remain up to date on our activities, you can follow our social media. We maintain channels in multiple languages to break through the language barriers and connect to local communities. You will find all links on our website, ourworldheritage.org. Thank you for being with us today, and we wish you a very fruitful event.
Welcome, everybody. Good evening, good day, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are at the moment. Welcome to the 4th week of our World Heritage Sustainability Debate Month. I would like to start by thanking our speakers and attendees for joining us today. I am Pamela Duran-Diaz from the Technical University of Munich and co-convener of the OWH Sustainability Team. And I have to tell you that we have prepared a very special session for you today. As those who have been following us since the 1st of July and even before, as you already know, we are following a case study approach to generate scientific evidence to provide policy recommendations for the UNESCO Convention in the context of its 50th birthday. With the aim of exploring the dimensions of sustainability in World Heritage from the perspective of different stakeholders, we launched a global call for case studies in the beginning of this year. We received 134 case studies from 50 different countries, all of them backed up by a group of people truly committed and willing to undergo a deep analytic process for the better understanding of the sites, regions, hemispheres, and the whole world. Divided the process into 2 rounds, and we selected by vote for the first round 51 case studies that underwent an assessment process consisting of a self-assessment phase where they completed a super complex formulary with qualitative data based on scores and composite indicators, and they provided in-depth qualitative information, and they actively participated in our regional workshops, and now we are part of the global debates taking place throughout our Sustainability Debate Month in July, in which we intend to trace global conclusions, but also to give the stage and recognition to the protagonists of this whole process, our case studies. But it was not only about identifying challenges and rooms for improvement, we also discovered best practices that we are happy to showcase during our Alternative Models Week, because it could be of inspiration to many other World Heritage sites around the world. As for this session, I would like to introduce the case studies that astonished us with their exceptional social inclusion and good governance strategies. The Reconciliation Action Plan of the Sydney Opera House in Australia that will be presented by Todd Phillips. The World Heritage Visitor Center's Gaming Technologies and the Gardening Preservation of the town of Bamberg in Germany, presented by Hannah Gröner. The oral history and storytelling in the frontiers of the Roman Empire in the UK, presented by Graham Bell. The Council of Elders for Decision-Making, Knowledge Transmission and Safeguarding of Intangible Heritage at the Sacred Mijikenda Kaya Forest in Kenya, presented by Professor Herman Kiriama. The role of the royal clan in the conservation of traditional know-how of the tombs of Uganda kings at Kasubi, Kampala in Uganda, presented by Priscilla Tusime. She is traveling today, so to overcome her absence, she sent us a recorded presentation and she will try to follow us for the Q&A, but we cannot guarantee that. And last but not least, the indigenous cooperatives as an alternative to short-sighted federal programs in Quetzalan, Mexico, presented by Professor Melissa Schumacher. A great selection of strategies, as you see. We will have the first round of presentations with the 3 presenters to give room for the Q&A from the public. Then we will have a second round of presentations with the last 3 presenters to finish, as well with the Q&A from the audience. Before giving the floor to our first speaker, I would like to thank Ege Gildirim, our OWH Sustainability Coordinator, for all her support and for being here. I would also like to remind you that this session is being streamed and recorded in OWH YouTube channel, as all the sessions that have been taking place since January, so check out the channel. The Q&A section is open in case you have some questions to our speakers. I strongly encourage you to use this section to post your questions instead of the chat, for it not to get lost in the comments. I also want to thank Maria Virginia Avila, the reporter of the session, for her support throughout the whole process. That being said, please welcome our first speaker, Mr. Todd Phillips. Phillips is an advisor at the First Nations Initiative at Sydney Opera House. He is an experienced educator who is proudly leading an Indigenous education revolution as the CEO of the Institute of Indigenous Australia. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Pamela. And I'm just going to share my screen. I've got a slideshow that I'd just like to share with everybody. Just want to say that I'm really excited to be here today and to share with the colleagues from all around the globe. It's really, really exciting. I just want to thank the team also for the opportunity to share about the Sydney Opera House, because it really is a magical place to work. Like I get to go to the Sydney Opera House every day, and I remember growing up as a young kid looking at the Opera House, and my parents would take me there, and I was just kind of amazed at the building. It is a really magical place to work. And before I start my quick presentation, I just want to do an acknowledgement of country, acknowledging place, because I live on Gadigal country, which is also the lands of the Gadigal where the Sydney Opera House sits. You're probably familiar with the iconic building, but it's really important that I acknowledge the Gadigal as the traditional custodians. We now refer to the place where the Sydney Opera House is as Bennelong Point, but it's known as Tubagali in the local Gadigal language. And it's really important that I do that. And if you do get an opportunity, really encourage people to share, to look at your own country and where you're living, and who are the traditional custodians, or who are the First Nations or Indigenous peoples there, because it can be really, really powerful when you find out about a long history of practices and educational things that have been happening in your own backyard. And I guess Australia's in a really unique position, because we have something that very few other countries have, is that we have the oldest, if not one of the oldest, continuing cultures in the world. So when we learn about cultural practices that are happening and have been happening in this country for a long time, we're not talking about a short time, we're talking about thousands and thousands of years, and the place where the Sydney Opera House has been a meeting place and a place of learning and performance and dance for many, many thousands of years. A little bit about myself. I'm the advisor, as mentioned previously, at the Sydney Opera House of First Nations initiatives. I get a really, really great job to come to work and work on First Nations initiatives in all different areas, looking at driving our reconciliation action plan, working with high school students who come and get work experience opportunities at the Sydney Opera House. Also, get to work with community, which is really, really important. A really, really important thing, because we, it's very, very vital that we work with the community in which we work with. Talking today, I'm going to be talking about a reconciliation action plan that the Sydney Opera House has committed to. And you might be sitting there and thinking, what is a reconciliation action plan or a RAP? But it really is a framework for organisations to commit to First Nations initiatives within their organisation. And in Australia, we currently have approximately 1,100 reconciliation action plans in all different industries and businesses, educational institutions, the Sydney Opera House being the first performing arts to commit to a reconciliation action plan. So in the last 20 years, we're seeing this big movement in Australia where organisations are saying, what can we do to support Indigenous communities in 3 areas: around building relationships with the local communities, building respect within their organisation, which is very, very vital, because we need to create culturally safe spaces for Indigenous people to be engaged and to work. And then the third one is about the opportunities. Where are the opportunities? This is the one that gets me really excited about. Where are the opportunities for First Nations people to engage with businesses, whether it be through employment, training, management, all sorts of different levels. And it's governed by I guess, led by Reconciliation Australia, who are the leading body in Australia for reconciliation. And if you want to create a plan and you want to commit to a RAP, it's a very, very public document, and you'll go through Reconciliation Australia, and they'll help you guide you through your plan to make sure it's realistic, make sure that you're kind of being challenged in them 3 areas. And Reconciliation Australia do a really, really great job where they hold organisations to accountability. And in Australia, we've recently seen some of the RAPs being revoked because they haven't been doing the right thing. But it's great in the sense that it does provide a framework for organisations to, I guess, to work within the parameters and be authentic in the sense that they're doing what they're committing to do. I did mention about the 3 pillars, and these are kind of fundamentally what RAPs are aiming to achieve. So we see, we're seeing some really great stuff happening all across the country, and it's exciting because 15 or 20 years ago in Australia, the reconciliation movement's only been happening for the last 20 years, but 20 years ago, we're having conversations now that we wouldn't have had not that long ago, where we're getting banks and cultural institutions and universities committing to these big plans to say, what is it that we can do to bring about reconciliation? What is it that we can do to work with First Nations communities? What is it that we can do to provide opportunities for First Nations communities to be through employment and training, and bridging that gap? Because in Australia, if you're not aware, we do have a significant gap in terms of education, employment, even life expectancy of Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples. So it's kind of really exciting to see that companies are actually committing to these things. Talking about the Sydney Opera House, I guess one of the really great things about the Sydney Opera House is that there is First Nations representative across all levels of governance. We have a really large working group, the Sydney Opera House being a really, I guess, quite a large organisation in terms of staff, but we've got a really, really great working group and a passionate working group that across all our portfolios that are driving our initiatives. And then on top of that, we have a First Nation staff network where we have staff all across the organisation that get together, and we provide a voice for them into the working group. They have an opportunity to come and be a part of it, or if not, they can raise concerns or about what they'd like to see throughout various initiatives across the organisation. And then we also have First Nations representative on our trust, and that's really exciting as well, because the trust which our organisation reports to, we have a First Nations person on there that can really really drive home messages about what the RAP's doing, where they want to go, which is really, really exciting. So I guess that's really, really important, that we do have voice within the organisation. I think it's one thing to have these amazing plans, but unless you have First Nations and diverse and inclusive voices within the organisation driving it or having a say, having some sort of accountability, sometimes they end up just being plans on shelves. So just conscious of time, I guess one of the things that's really exciting at Sydney Opera House is that we have our RAP. We're in the 10th year of our RAP. In Australia, there's 4 levels of RAPs. We have Reflect and Innovate, and then you've got these sort of higher level RAPs in terms of accountability, which are our Stretch and our Elevate RAPs. So 4 levels of RAPs, and only in Australia there's only about 10% of RAPs. So we have 1,100 currently that have these high level RAPs, and the Sydney Opera House has one of them RAPs, which is really, it's really great. It's also really, really challenging. And we also have a diversity, inclusion and belonging strategy and environmental heritage works. But I guess the thing that's kind of holding them all together is, I guess, our commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals or the global goals. And the way that I look at it is the global goals, while it encapsulates a lot of the things of the RAP, it's really a blueprint for achieving more sustainable and a better future for all people. So when we look at what are the First Nation initiatives we're doing with employment, with training, with our cultural activities such as dance rights, we're wanting to do something that's sustainable and is going to be there for the long term for the next generation. We have some really, really amazing festivals and programs that focus on First Nation initiatives at the Sydney Opera House. But it's imperative that we have voice, we have First Nations people leading it. We have my position, we have a head of programming for First Nations programming, and that we have these continual work experience programs that are there throughout the year, so that kids can come in from high school, get an experience of legal, security, people in government, all sorts of different areas, and then support them on their journey to through their career. So I guess that's me. I've got one of the best jobs in the country, where I get to work at the Sydney Opera House and work with some amazing people. Get to see lots of shows and see kids come in and just be sort of the faces on the kids when they come in and see performances, and get an experience of working with our amazing teams. It's really quite special. Happy to take questions afterwards. It's a bit of a snapshot of what I do, and I've put some pictures up on the presentation that you can kind of see, but yeah, happy to take any sort of questions later.
Thank you very much, Todd, for this enlightening presentation. It was very interesting to see how to work with First Nation communities, how to bridge this gap in terms of education, employment, and integration by providing some, well, employment and training and cultural activities. I think giving First Nations a voice and a space is the best way to keep World Heritage alive. So thank you very much for this. I would like to welcome also Ms. Hannah Kloner. Hannah Kloner, she has a master's degree in cultural studies. She has been working at the World Heritage Office of Bamberg since December 2019, and she is here to talk about Bamberg. Hannah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pamela. So let me share my screen. Okay.
Yes, I think stop sharing.
Yes.
Thank you.
So can you see my presentation now? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So it's working perfect. So thank you very much, Pamela, for inviting Bamberg to be part of today's session on alternative social and governance models for World Heritage Site. I will contribute some insights from Bamberg on the application of gaming technologies to promote both intangible cultural heritage and world heritage. So, and for those who haven't been to Bamberg yet, I share some pictures with you at first. What's very emblematic for Bamberg is the old town hall you can see at the picture here, situated in the middle of the river. And of course, the many churches and monasteries that are still very well preserved. You can see two of them at the picture as well. That you get a further impression about Bamberg, I should share some basic numbers with you. Bamberg is a municipality with 80,000 inhabitants in the north of Bavaria. You can see the location with the light blue dot at the map. 16 to 17% of the inhabitants are students, which keeps the municipality quite young. In terms of tourism, last year we had around 400,000 overnight stays, but that's only half of that we usually have, because due to the corona pandemic, numbers have gone down sharply like everywhere else in the world. What is also quite special about Bamberg are the more than 1,000 listed monuments that they require a lot of effort to maintain and to preserve them. Most of them stem from the Middle Ages and from the Baroque period. Altogether, our heritage site spans 142 hectares of urban area. The reason why we've been inscribed our OUV is the medieval layout of the city and the very well preserved buildings, mostly from the Middle Ages and the Baroque period. Still today, you can take the Zweitlerplan that you can see on the pictures. It's from 1602 to orientate yourself on the city, because the structure is still the same. So the structure didn't change since 400 years. Another, what is also special in Bamberg are not only the old buildings, but also the urban gardens that have been cultivated since the Middle Ages. This particular characteristic of Bamberg is also listed on the Panorama Solution for a Healthy Planet platform, as well as at the UNESCO Canopy platform. It's a good practice example how to connect World Heritage and sustainability. I will post the links if you want to have more information later in the chat, so you can look at them yourself. Those green areas in the middle of the city do not only produce food for Bambergers, but they also improve the urban climate, and at the same time they're pretty difficult to maintain because they're all in private possessions. So they're usually not accessible and even not visible, because if you're walking through the Market Gardeners district, you can't see them, because as you can see at the picture, they are surrounded by rings of private houses and the fields are behind the houses. And that makes it particularly challenging to maintain those urban gardens. The area there has shrunk over the centuries. At its peak, around 1900, Bamberg had around 500 gardener families, and it was very important for the economy. And now you can see a picture of the current gardener families. There are only about 20 to 30 left who still pursue horticulture within the cities. Nowadays, they also use some areas at the borders of the cities. But of course, there's a lot of struggle with the small areas, especially in the inner city. So a lot of work have to be done by hand, which results in higher prices. It's difficult for them to stay competitive at a global market. And also within the city, they struggle with higher water charges and a lack of parking space for their customers. That's why the city of Bamberg tries very hard to support the gardeners to maintain their source of income also for the future. With such a long gardening tradition, we also have particular species of vegetable that are perfectly adapted to the Bamberg soil and to the Bamberg's climate. For example, as you can see at the picture, the Bamberger Hörnle. It's a small potato of a very particular taste. Also, Bamberg is known for its cabbages, the pear-shaped onion, and a very mild form of a garlic plant. Now I come to our World Heritage Visitor Center. We opened 2019. You can see here a picture from the outside. It was about 26 years after our inscriptions. On the picture, you can see that it was a former mill. It's in the middle of the river, of the other side of the old town hall. And here you can see another picture. That's the inside of our exhibition. It's a panoramic picture of a VR tour. And if you want to experience our exhibition by yourself, I can post the link to the VR tour in the chat later as well. Our visitor center embeds the World Heritage Site in Bamberg in its international UNESCO context and looks into 3 historic districts of the World Heritage Site, including, of course, the Market Gardeners district, which you can see here highlighted in green. In that part of the exhibition, we introduce the local vegetables. Also, there's specific names in Bamberg dialect, as you heard before, the Bamberger Hörnle for the special potato. We look into the religious and social dimensions of the Gardeners district, which has been inscribed on the National List of Intangible Cultural Heritage in 2016. In that exhibition, we also used gaming technologies. In that picture, you can see our 4 interactive screens. One of them is in the area of the Market Gardeners district, that's a green one, the so-called Plant-O-Mat, where you can digitally cultivate onions. You determine the time of the year where you plant them, you determine the distance between the individual plants, you set the quantity of water to water them, and then you get a feedback about your gardening success according to the parameters you set, and you get it by email. That helps to attract both adults as well as children, World Heritage experts and historians, but also people who hardly go to museum, because the whole exhibition is very inviting, it's colorful, it has places where you can rest. And so we experienced so far in that more or less 2 years that pretty much every visitor finds a corner, an object, a screen that appeals to him or her. Therefore, we get very positive feedback in our guest book, for example, the entry of the 17-year-old Therese, who wrote, "Very cool museum, most of all for the kids, very light and very interactive." But I can assure you that adults also very much enjoy the exhibition and use it as kind of inspiration to afterwards explore the city itself. It helps them to see spaces, to see details that without our exhibition they might have overlooked. So that was my presentation. I'll tip the links in the chat so you can experience a little bit more or find a little bit more information. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Hannah. This was a wonderful experience that you shared. I had a lovely day with Ms. Patricia Albert in Bamberg, which she showed me this visitor center, and I thought it was worth to showcase, of course. Yes, I think something very interesting about this case is that you have managed to bridge the gap between or across the different generations, for example, by preserving the memory of the gardening communities, also keeping it functional, and then adapting all of this knowledge to the needs and language of the younger generations. Thank you very much for this, Hannah. I would like to please welcome now Mr. Graham Bell. Graham is the Director of Cultura Trust, an NGO based in the UK with a European role. Territorial was founded in 1965 and has been responsible for rescuing and repurposing historic sites at risk. Latest being a 60 hectares farm, which is part of the Adrian's wall section of the Frontiers of the Roman Empire World Heritage Site. He was the UK National Coordinator for the 2018 European Year of Cultural Heritage. Is on the board of the Europa Nostra, as well as advising other NGOs across Europe. Thank you for being here, Graham. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Isn't it interesting how people communicate? I was just thinking during Hannah's presentation that there are two ways in which you can start a relationship. One is you say, let's play a game. And the other is, let me tell you a story. And stories have an extraordinary role, particularly, I think, in World Heritage. And in my presentation, you probably won't find any statistics or data because it's about people. And I've started with this phrase, what have the Romans ever done for us? This is a theme of my involvement in our World Heritage, and I'm sticking with it because there is a story behind that. And some of you already know where it came from because this really goes back 42 years, believe it or not. And some people can still quote the Monty Python film, and what have the Romans ever done for us? And that's quite an interesting thing in itself, that the film is now over 40 years old, but people remember the storyline. People remember the quotes. So if you want people to derive something of meaning from World Heritage, either it's got to be some sort of a game or it's a storyline. And what I want to share with you today is just the simplicity of how do you get a story across. And for me and for the Roman frontiers, it's international. So in a sense, we've got this connectivity across Europe leading right down to an individual site and an individual local community. But right across that yellow box are communities connected by heritage, by World Heritage. But do they know it? And if they do know it, what do they know about it? So the first thing is that the stories transcend place and time and culture and language. A story can be expressed without words, through gestures or by other means. So how do we communicate the value, the outstanding universal value that defines World Heritage? And for archaeology, that's even more difficult, because if you are trying to tell the story of something that the eye cannot see, which is buried archaeology, then how in the world can you engage with people who are not archaeologists, who in a sense probably don't even really know much about history? And this is the Roman fort that we have on the west coast of Cumbria in the UK. And you've got the advantage of this view that you can see the outline of the fort because of the way the light is. But people on the ground can't see that. All they can see is that there's a bit of a mound in the field. But of particular interest in the site that we have is in the field at the bottom of the picture, which you can see nothing in. But below that is the whole civilian settlement that supported that fort. So the challenge is, how do you engage, how do you interest, how do you excite people about World Heritage when you can't even see anything? Well, part of it is about showing them the timeline of history. And we could start with a photograph in the 19th century, which shows the excavation revealing a temple on that site. But then they might think, well, you know, okay, but that was then, that was 100, 150 years ago. What's that got to do with me? What have the Romans ever done for us? And who are the people in the photograph? Are they history? In other words, nothing to do with me. Well, then it comes to life when you bring the students and you're doing a further revelation of the archaeology. And then the thing starts to come to life physically, but also in terms of the narrative between the students and between the local people looking over the fence, and all of that issue about revelation. And in a sense, communication about World Heritage depends on how effective we are in revealing the storyline that connects people today with not only the Roman period, but the 2,000 years of history nearly that divide the two. You know, this site has existed through that period of history. What happened in 1452? And that raises the whole principle for me in this presentation, which is about, well, every World Heritage Site will have a management plan. Every World Heritage Site has a distinctiveness based on its outstanding universal value. But how are we telling that story? And indeed, what is the message at the heart of it? And there may be very traditional, conventional ways of telling stories. And here we have someone, an authority on Roman heritage, explaining to a group about the site that he's on. And for some people, this is absolutely the captivating moment. You have the voice, you have the gestures, you have the site, you have the context of the landscape, everything coming together in one place, in one storyline. But could you see a school group picking up on that? Could you see a group of people who, in a sense, are on the margins of society, standing captivated? Possibly, possibly not. But I suggest that something like this is going to grab their attention much more than having to listen while the wind's blowing, that you might hear half the story. There is no escaping in the visual of reenactment just what it's like and what this really meant. But so far what I've showed you is all about the people, in a sense, in authority, the site owners, the managers, the World Heritage Committee, all of those people who have some kind of formal role in the custodianship of World Heritage Sites. Are they really the storytellers? And in a sense, if they're telling the story, who's the audience? Is this a flow of communication, information, just in one direction? I like to think that communication should be going in both directions. And there is a site along Hadrian's Wall which is exceptional because the ground conditions are anaerobic. In other words, there's no oxygen, which means that a phenomenal amount of artifacts have been collected and conserved and then expressed. And one of the most famous is these writing tablets from the Roman period, about 122, 125, which is someone writing home to his parents about his underpants. Now, suddenly, what could be a very dry subject enlivens people, because it's the sort of thing, hang on a minute, I did that last week. So it's about relevance. It's about not just the meaning, but it's about something that connects through the generations into people's lives now. I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is the International Association for Public Participation. This appears all over the internet in all sorts of guises, but this has been part of my life for quite a number of years, because the presumption is that if we are involved with working with communities, we're at the left-hand end of the spectrum. In other words, we, the professionals, consider carefully, we do our research, we formulate options, and we arrive at a conclusion as to what the right thing to do is about heritage, whether it's archaeology, buildings, historic cities. But it's quite brave, I would say, to move to the right along this spectrum. The extreme right, empower, is that it's almost complete delegation of responsibility to local people. And I was interested in what Todd was saying about the nations, and in a sense, the First Nations and so on. And where the balance of truth, the balance of the story lies. And I just want to leave you with the fact that somewhere in that spectrum, each World Heritage Site will be different. But there should be co-curation. There should be an opportunity where communities are working together. And for me, the interesting thing about the Roman Frontier World Heritage Site, being a transnational, transcontinent World Heritage Site, is that that line across Europe is in itself a storyline waiting to be told. Lots have been published about the archaeology, but not about what do the Romans mean, what have the Romans done for us in terms of society today. So the next time that you're looking at a conservation plan, a management plan, a business plan, or even a communications plan, just remember the people that you're talking to, and don't just communicate to them, involve them in the story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham, for this beautiful presentation. It made me think of one of our Latin American Nobel Prizes of Literature, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who said that our story is not what we live, what we remember, and how we remember it in order to tell it as a story. I think that oral traditions are a way to reveal the storyline of 2,000 years of history hidden in the underground of Cumbria. There are a layer of grass, so this is a way to keep it alive, of course. And the most wonderful thing from my point of view is that you are also addressing it from the professional point of view, not only the empirical approach, by addressing it through this outline spectrum of public participation. So thank you very much. I would like to open now the floor for questions from the public. I know that we had a question that Todd answered already in the Q&A, but if you don't mind, I would like to make it public, Todd, for you to respond publicly. Question was from Susan Ross, and she said, writing from Ottawa, an unceded Algonquin territory in Canada, can you speak a bit to any challenges or opportunities of the SOP RAP that are specific to urban indigeneity, such as how to support relationships between Gadigal people and the First Nations from elsewhere in Australia, and to goals for inclusion and diversity more generally in a large city? Thank you.
I guess Sydney and New South Wales is unique in the sense that we have local Aboriginal land councils which cover all areas of the state. Sydney is a really unique place that the majority of people that live here, I'm talking about First Nations people, aren't from Sydney. They're from other regions. They come to Sydney for school, education, for work, or they've moved here with their families. For opportunities. And I guess one of the things that I see, I work with a lot of young people in the community, is that when people come into Sydney, and particularly with, there's a big movement for young Indigenous kids to go to boarding schools and to get, various educations, is that disconnect when people are away from their community, you really see them either sink or swim. And one of the things that's really, really important is that they get, I guess, a connection to either the land councils or to a range of services that can really support them. So I guess that's one thing. It's really vital that when people are living away from their community, that they're connected in with the community. I live not far from the Sydney Opera House in just down the road in the next suburb. We have a range of different organizations like, the National Centre for Indigenous Excellence, which really has a range of different sporting and art and education programs. But yeah, I think that's one thing, and people need to connect in, because we do see that divide where I see it all the time, where Indigenous people will sort of they'll know that people are from the country or they're from the local area. But it's really important that they connect in. So that I guess there's a sense of unity. And I guess diversity inclusion as a second part of the question is a real challenge. It's a really hot topic at the moment. We're seeing a lot of big organizations and, government really sort of pushing that because it's one thing to be diverse. A lot of workplaces are diverse, but it's about, are they inclusive, and do people feel like they belong there? So that's the real challenge. We can recruit people from all diverse backgrounds, but what are the things that are making that organization a place of that are inclusive and make people feel that they belong there? And that's the challenge. I think that's one of the things that organizations need to be held to account, that they have plans that they follow through. Like I mentioned before, that the Opera House has, First Nations voice within all levels of governance. So I think it's important that you can't just sort of talk the talk. You actually got to walk it and make sure that your plans have things there that have that level of accountability.
Thank you very much, Todd. I think you raised something very, very interesting that I would like to extend to Graham here. It was mentioning this sense of belonging. So in the case of Cumbria and the borders of the Roman Empire, this is the only case we have seen so far that is outside of the urban context. How do you reinforce the sense of belonging in order to protect heritage and keep it alive?
That's probably the most important point you could make, because in the aerial view that I showed, the Roman heritage is literally just across the road from a town. And the people in that town have no sense of the Roman archaeology being important to them. And in a sense, our role is to cross the road. It's to be able to make that archaeology, that site, relevant to people who are suffering economic, social, health issues, long-term unemployed. Archaeology is for the visitor. It's not for the local people. And this isn't just about a school visit, once a term, once a semester. This is about creating the things that are important to them, which is employment, providing a sense of well-being through access to the site. So rather than us saying to them, but we think this is important, you should listen, it's about engaging with them in ways that are tangible, relevant now. And I think that's really the point that I wanted to make today.
Thank you very much, Graham. I think you also raised another important point that I would like to address to Hannah. It was about heritage being for outsiders rather than for the locals. In the case of Bamberg, I think it is mainly for the locals, isn't it? So would you please tell us a bit more about the experience of bridging the gap for the locals, but in terms of new and older generations? I know that the visitor center was built in a heritage site, trying to address clean energy production.
Yeah, I think the visitor centers for both for the local people and for tourists as well. But yeah, of course, we have many locals who come and visit it. We have for every generation something in the visitor center. For the older generation, we have something to read, longer texts. But for younger people, we have this the screen where they can plant onions, where they can build their own houses, where they can make their own tours through Bamberg. We have some listening stations. We have other touch screens where you can look at pictures from our World Heritage Site. And another point is that we have guided tours, especially for school classes. We have guided tours with something like a quiz afterwards, that they have to look at the exhibition themselves, because sometimes it's better for them just to do something on their own, not just listening. And yeah, we have of course also older people, or like groups who are coming to visit us, and we have guided tour for them as well. And we adapt the guided tour to the group, as if they're older or younger, what do they want to know? But a very important point is that we have to raise the awareness that the World Heritage in Bamberg is not only the old town, like the old buildings, that we also have the Market Gardeners district, because you can't see it very well from if you just walk through, because the houses are, the gardens are behind the houses. So we have to raise the awareness even with the local people here. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Hannah. I think it's great to see how adaptability and innovation are strategies to provide new approaches to World Heritage. Thank you. I think we're ready to go to the second round of presentations, and I would like to start with my longtime friend, Melissa Schumacher. Melissa, well, we know each other for many years already. She is a professor in architecture at Universidad de las Américas Puebla. She's an architect, an urban planner, and she defines herself as a ruralist. She has a PhD in land management from the Technical University of Munich, and we have worked together in many projects. So Melissa, it's an honor to have you here. Thank you also for answering to our call for case studies with your very interesting approach to Quetzalan. So Meli, the floor is yours.
Many thanks. Gracias, dear Pamela, to all the team from this session. I'm very glad to present this case study of Quetzalan. And also I want to apologize because my little kid is around me, so maybe you hear her. You will hear her, sorry. Let me, sorry. Wait. I can't. Maybe just a minute.
I take the chance to thank again our panelists and attendees for joining here today. Thank you very much for also for the questions that you're posting, and for the great work that you're putting behind all of this. You have been engaged in this process with a full commitment, and we are the least thing that we can do is being grateful for all your support.
Okay, yeah, now it's ready. Okay, I'm very happy to see those very interesting cases. Mine, of course, I hope will be interest for all of you. It's all about women empowerment from the indigenous perspective in a very interesting place in Mexico. First of all, I just want to make a little portrait of indigenous women in Mexico and make some remarks, because female peasants are responsible for the production of more of the 50% of food in Mexico. Oh, sorry. Also, women labor is an undervalued catalyst for economic and community development. And we have tons of female farmers, artisans, and participants that really works as key stakeholders. And they're very important because they work with this sense of community and social awareness. Our case study is located in the central part of Mexico. Mexico is as well a huge country. And you will see in the little red dot, it's also located in the middle of the mountains in the state of Puebla. And well, it's also part of, well, it was inscribed in the World Heritage List with the ritual ceremony of the flying people of Papantla or Quetzalan. And as you see, it has like traditional Mexican architecture with a lot of nature and coffee plantations. But I just want, sorry, give me just 30 seconds to see what's happening with my little child.
Of course, Melissa.
Just 1 second, because I really don't want to miss this.
Yes, I guess Melissa also portrays yes, it's the portrait of a working woman, and this is something that we can, yes, all learn. You have to be multitasking.
If Melissa's child can move onto another Zoom screen, I'll tell him or her a story.
That would be lovely. I would like to take the chance right now to read out loud a message that our coordinator, Egi Gildirim, posted in the chat. Well, first of all, she's thanking all of us for, well, all of you, the presenters, for being here. I think what is important to highlight is that she thinks it's refreshing to see good practices in World Heritage while the committee session is ongoing from the 16th till the 31st of July. That is full of controversy, of unsustainable development, but now having proactive projects ensuring sustainability is very refreshing. So thank you, Ege, for that comment. And Melissa, we're ready.
Okay, sorry. Well, I also want to talk about indigenous self-determination, that it's very important for empowering women, rural women, especially when we understand women as persons, as, sorry, Pam, can you help me?
Yes, of course. Something that we can do now is we can stop your presentation for the moment. We can show Priscilla's presentation, which is recorded, and see how it works with your child, of course. Let's try that. All right. So let's give Melissa some time to prepare. In the meantime, I would like to introduce Priscilla Tusime. She's a project planner and land economist from Makerere University. She has a master's degree in land management and land tenure from the Technical University of Munich. And she conducted a research in intangible heritage at Gina Kanda International Forum for the Development of Extreme Cultural Landscapes in Barcelona. So just give me one moment for me to share my screen where I have Priscilla's presentation.
Hello, everyone. I am pleased to be able to take part in the sustainability debate of July 2021 for our World Heritage. I was also happy to be able to take part in the African regional debates, and I was surprised and impressed to find that there were many other heritage sites of which we have many similarities, and such as challenges, modes of site management, repercussions, environmental, economical, social, and governance problems. And I've managed to get some of the recommendations and ways of management to be used also for Kasubi tombs. I think it would be a good idea to learn from each other. Yes, and on that note, I would like to present the Kasubi, the heritage site of tombs of Buganda kings at Kasubi in Uganda. My name is Priscilla Tusime. Kasubi tombs is the burial ground of 4 kings of Buganda kingdom that include Mwanga, Kabaka Mwanga, Kabaka Mutesa, among others. These were very active during the colonial period of Uganda. The Kasubi tombs is an incredible piece of vernacular Uganda architecture style that was constructed in 1882. It built with purely and only vegetal materials such as wood, reeds, wattle, and daub, for example. The site sits on 64 acres on Kasubi Hill in Kampala. As you can see in this topographical map and satellite image, It's this white area or green area that more looks like a triangle. That's the extent of the site. But the main building we are going to talk about is the Mozibo Azala Mpanga, this hut that carries with it the historical, cultural, and spiritual values of the Buganda Kingdom. Unfortunately, in March 2010, the site was gutted down by fires. What is the outstanding universal value of the site? The site is a magnificent piece of human creativity, both in conception and also in execution. It also bears with it witness to the living cultural traditions of the Buganda Kingdom. The spatial organization of the Kasubi tombs shows the masterpiece of the intriguing Ganda cultural, the architectural style and place and design place. So this reflects on the technical development over the years, over centuries, that the Baganda people have achieved, the technical advancement. It's one of the rare only form of structure constructed in such a manner in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. It is built with a natural build. The built and natural elements are charged with, as I had already said, with the cultural, historical, and spiritual values of the site. That means it's in tune with its intangible assets. What are the challenges affecting the site? Policies on biodiversity. There is per se not really available policies on protection of the ecosystem. The green area is one of the two remaining green areas in the urban center in the Kampala city, and its ecosystem is prevailing mostly so because of heritage site being protected till now. The unnatural building materials. In July 2015, the local custodians that are responsible for maintenance of the site had a conflict with international and local consultants responsible for reconstruction of the site, indicating that they did not agree with the steel bars that were to be incorporated in the construction of the Kasubi tombs. And as well that this also puts at risk the outstanding universal value of the structure as well. There is need for more tourists. There's need of at least a minimum of 12,000 tourists per year in order to achieve minimum income needed for the maintenance of the site. This is the only source of income, including the gate fee, entrance fee. Then there is partial rule of law regarding to the governance on this according to governance on the site. But this is a general problem in the country. And there's underlooking usefulness of local custodians. This as I had mentioned earlier in an example, the custodians feel in the reconstruction of the site that during this time when there was a conflict, that they have more knowledge in the reconstruction of the roof compared to the architects or the international organizations with the method they have in the construction in the reconstruction of the site. And this was a challenge, and it halted the construction for a couple of days. I think it was even extended, maybe months. Then there's ever-growing urban pressure. This we have already seen in the previous topographical maps and the satellite image. As you can see, there is a growing number of infrastructure, roads, and hotels, and the diverse migrant community settling in this area. There's already activities going on at the border of the property, such as dumping of waste. So small businesses taking place. Next, what are the trends? Positive trends of the site. Improved capturing of information about the site. I don't know if other sites have experienced this, other heritage site where a site is at risk or really is distracted from within a night, and it's completely distracted, and the next day it's no more. We have threats coming from the environment, climate change, but this was really terrible, a terrible risk or disaster for that site. Therefore, the improved capturing of information is very important for the maintenance and for the reconstruction or the sustainability of the site in the future. Also, I would like to add that since was handing down of skills and rituals to that next generation, the local custodians right now have the technical know-how, because it was handed down to them from their forefathers. So that's how this has managed the skills and information on how to rebuild the site has managed to prevail and save the site. And then there's women empowerment, but it needs more emphasis. There's a number of positions in the management of the site for women, but they're quite few, and normally they're not in a very good state. They are the widows responsible for taking care of the tombs, cleaning the site for the tombs. But there's more emphasis needed for women to take part in the maintenance of the site and the management of the site. Then there's planned incentives to economically develop the site. The government and UNESCO is working hand in hand. There's a master plan from the architecture responsible in the reconstruction of the site. There's a master plan for a traditional village, a recreational center, encouraging local community members to make handicrafts, and so that they can sell them and also have a source of income. There's partnering with education institutions such as schools, among others, among other institutions, to spread knowledge and information about the site in order to improve at least tourism sector of the site. Then there's capacity building and training of the traditional custodians responsible for maintenance of that site. That is at the moment the risk management plan for the fire management plan, fire extinguishing. So they are being taken through how to handle such a scenario if in case it happened again. Then what are my recommendations? My recommendations to the management of the site is capacity building should take the form not only in training but also learning from the trained persons. As I had already explained in the example I gave, Japanese company was contracted to be responsible to in the building of the thatch or the roof of the site, because the Japanese have a long tradition of living in residence with a thatch, also building religious sites with a thatch. So they were contracted, but this really was not a welcomed idea by the local custodians. So I suggest as well there should be respect and recognition of the indigenous community and custodians from practitioners and researchers and international organizations. This empowers them to feel like they are part of the sustainability or the sustainable management of the site. And indeed, they are the people who are mainly responsible of the site, and that the sites are at today, present day, in the position that they are in. Most of them probably would have been dilapidated a long time ago. Encouragement of more women to take roles in the management of the site, and also emphasis on the importance of intangible assets. I would say for the case of Kasubi tombs, it's mostly standing right now. At this point, when the whole building was destructed, what's keeping it alive is the intangible asset, the spiritual, the historical, and the traditional values that the people have, that our people are attached to the site. Thank you very much, and I wish you a lovely stay in the meeting.
So I will turn on my video again. I didn't want to overlap on Priscilla's presentation. So yes, the urban layout of Kampala is very interesting. It's based on the topography of the hilly topography of Kampala. All important buildings are built on the top of those hills, and Kasubi tombs are not an exception. I think this presentation was interesting from the point of view that the role of the local custodians, they rebelled against the imposition of unnatural building materials, and then they were very engaged into handing down the skills and rituals to the next generation for the restoration of the buildings. And this is being done by partnering with educational institutions. I guess this is a wonderful way to make intangible heritage somehow tangible as well. Lisa, it's good to have you back. So are you ready to start over?
Yes, I hope so. I hope so.
Perfect.
Okay, I will share my screen again. Just a minute. Okay. Well, just do you see my image? Just no.
Yes, and it's wonderful to hear the laughter in the background instead of the crying. I'm glad that it has been managed.
Dun, dun, dun. I think this, no. Do you see it? No.
Sí, lo vemos.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, well, recapitulating, I was talking about the importance of empowering women and this is a sexual case story in Quetzalan, in the heart of Mexican mountains. And I want to talk just a little bit about the indigenous self-determination and why this is so important when we talk about the dimensions of empowering indigenous rural women. First of all, we need to understand women as persons that recognize their organizations to which they belong and transform their relations to establish with other members of the family. So family, it's the roots, and the community are the roots, no, to sustain this empowerment. Well, especially we were working with this female association that's called Masewal CMH. I'm sorry, I'm not able to pronounce properly the name because it's in Nahuatl, that's the local language. and one of the important indigenous language in this country. And it's important to mention that the role of these Nahua women, this indigenous group, it's taking care of water resources because it's essential, no, for the sustainability of the community and their culture. And this association with this background was created more than 30 years ago to generate jobs for women artisans, especially artisans, that mitigate migration to big cities like Mexico City, like Puebla City, or to the United States. And it has been very successful because they work with these traditional fabrics, these traditional textiles that are very common in this area of Mexico. And also they work with hospitality. They have a community hotel, and all these women that you see in this image are responsible for receiving all the tourists and people that work with them, and has been very successful since then. And they have more than 300 women from a community that are working in form of commissions to sustain this project. Therefore, it's important to consider that indigenous self-determination and bioculture, like the case of Quetzalan, are the heart, no, of improving community development. And if we consider female empowered not only as key stakeholders, also as community drivers, we will be able to amalgamate among the different social organizations, local policies, and economic activities. And as the women from the area says, they are responsible of watering the community. They are responsible of watering the life. Therefore, we propose to analyze this type of community development from the perspective of expose, propose, and politize how women are working with the base of bioculture and local knowledge. Well, as a conclusion, I just want to remark that non-inclusive public policies, programs, and structures fail, as I already told you, to identify women as these key stakeholders who could introduce better agricultural practices, improve housing conditions, and other aspects like conservation, health coverage, and resource management. Especially, I just want to go back to this image. Quetzalan is located in a very, very rich natural resource area, and it has been very exposed to mining concessions, fracking concessions, and the women from this organization, from the CMH organizations, they are leaders in the community to fight against the mining concession, especially because they are damaging the land. No? And they are one of these indigenous groups and community groups that are really, really aware the importance of the bioculture that are surrounded by. And well, they are one of the first groups that fight against these mining exploitations. And therefore, well, sorry. It's important to remark that they are very, really, really great stakeholders that we need to consider for future projects. Many thanks, Tlazocamatli, and well, sorry for the toddler interruption.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Gracias. This was a very interesting presentation. Yes, to see indigenous communities and especially female farmers that are responsible but not really acknowledged for producing about 50% of the national food produce. I think it's very interesting to know that, to see that they are doing much more than that. I think that indigenous women empowerment through community development is something that is very powerful and something really necessary across the world. We would like to know a bit more about those non-inclusive policies and development programs that you talked about in your presentation. Before that, I would like to verify if Herman Kiriyama is here to give his presentation. If not, we will continue to the Q&A. Herman, are you here? I've been trying to communicate with him. I can see him connected, and he's the next presenter. He said he had a simultaneous meeting. So I'm really hoping that he can hear us and
He's connected. I'm seeing, but it's muted.
Herman, are you there? Can you hear us? You ready to present? I just read a comment from Ege Gildirim. She says that women will save the world. She believes that. Thank you very much for that. Well, I would like to take the chance at the moment, as Herman is not responding, to open the floor for Q&A from the public. I am very honored to see so many important people connected as attendees. Thank you very much for joining. And Herman, can you hear us? I can see you there.
Sorry, Pamela, I am back.
There you are.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So Virginia has your presentation. She will share for you. And yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon and good morning, good night, good evening, whatever the time zone. I'm presenting on the sacred kaya, which are found in the coastal strip of Kenya. If you can move the next slide, please. These forests, there are about 40 of them, but 11 were listed in the World Heritage Site because they were the ones which were deemed to the World Heritage list, because they are the ones who are deemed to have OUVs. And these sites were formed or created in the 16th century as people moved from various places. And initially they were supposed to be fortresses. They were protecting a community from attacks from other communities. And because they have got these 40 sites have got various characteristics, and one of them that they are deemed to be sacred to the community, because that's where they bury their revered elders, and also that's where they go to carry out their communal sacrifices and whatever. So that here the next slide. If you were to go to the area currently, you can see the forest. I mean, there are tiny forests like those all over the landscape. And this forest has been protected because of the sacredness that these sites have been bestowed by the community. The next slide, please. So then, these forests have got certain rules and regulations which ensure that they still maintain their pristineness. For example, people are not allowed to do what you can call untoward things within the forest. Untoward things like killing animals, cutting trees, or even lighting fires, harvesting any kind of product from the forest. And for you to go to the forest, you have to use certain routes which have been defined by the elders. And now the elders, or the council of elders, are the ones who are in charge of the forests. But for them to do that, they are given powers, and these ritual powers, by the ancestors. For you to be an elder, you must, they say, you must be possessed by certain ancestral spirits, and then you are ordained to be an elder. And then once you are a Kaya elder, then you have the powers to maintain the traditional rules and regulations of the kayas. For instance, they're supposed to pray for rain, they're supposed to pray for good harvest, and when there are calamities in the community, they go to the forest to carry out sacrifices so that the community can get well. Next slide, please. So that the kayas are there at the moment, they're supposed to express the identity of the Michikenda. These are the 9 communities who collectively own the kayas. And then those traditions and practices that have been put in place, that the ones which govern the existence of these kayas. So like all taking, if somebody has stolen and they want to know whether you are the thief or not, you go to the forest, you take an oath there. And burial rites for the elders are conducted in the kayas. If you want to name a newborn child, you take him there. If there are reconciliations, all these kind of things are done in the forest and they're done by the kaya elders. So in other words, then what we're saying is that both the intangible heritage comes to bear within this tangible place we call the kayas. So in other words, that is the intangibility which makes the kayas to be the kayas. Without these ceremonies, without the practices and traditions, the kayas will not be considered to be what they are. So then to the Michikenda people, the intangible things, the rites, the sacrifices, the ceremonies are very important for the maintenance of the kayas. So that
Herman, are you there? Can you hear us? Is it only me? You cannot hear Herman, or is it everyone?
I can hear.
All right.
I think that we lost him.
Yes, I think we lost him. Sorry about that. It was very interesting to hear about the Kambi and the Kayas, and
I think he is. Herman, can you hear?
yeah, I'm losing power sometimes.
Okay.
So that you can get me now?
Yes, and
yes,
with a better sound.
Okay. So then that I was saying that in some places, because the people there do no longer ascribe to the rituals, they no longer ascribe to the customs, what that make the kayas what they are, they have destroyed some of these kayas. That's why instead of 4 of them being listed in the World Heritage Site, we have the list, we have got only 11. These are the ones which still have those ceremonies and rituals conducted. So in essence, then we are saying the kayas could not be there if the people do not ascribe to the intangible culture that makes the kayas to be the kayas. Once they forget doing that, then the kayas lose their meaning. And
I think he's having connection problems again.
Yes, we lost again. I can hear.
I cannot hear anything, and I can still see him connected. Yes, it is a pity, because it was very, very interesting to understand how this transmission of powers and maintenance of the rules and regulations to ensure the sacredness of the forest could be done through Kaya elders and the Kambi, the Council of Elders. Yes, Herman, are you there? Can you hear us? We lost you again.
sorry, I'm having connection issues. Maybe just next slide and I finish. think I should finish fast before again I disappear. So in essence, then that what I wanted to say is that the kayas have been maintained because of the taboos, the curses, and the spiritual sanctions which the community has put in place in order to make them to be they are. And if you don't follow the ritual, the taboos, you pay fines, and the fine can be very heavy, may even lead to death within a family. Or sometimes somebody may become so sick until you do what? Until you do what is supposed to do. And so that it is this immaterial culture that has made the material kaya or the tangible kaya to be what it is. I think I should finish there before I disappear again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Herman, for this interesting presentation. It's, as you finish, the immaterial culture is as important as the material one. And I would like to, well, thank you all for your patience and for bearing with us despite the unforeseen situations we have been experiencing throughout this session. I would also like to apologize because I forgot to introduce Mr. Herman Kiriyama. So please let me read his short bio for you to know who he is. Herman is a senior lecturer at Kisii University in Kenya. Previously, he was head of coastal archaeology with the National Museums of Kenya. He has a PhD in cultural heritage and museum studies from Deakin University in Australia. So thank you very much, Herman, for your intervention. I can see that we have one question here for Melissa in our Q&A. I have to say it's a very provocative question. I will read it out loud. It's Barbara Molina. She says, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, for example, you cannot develop independent research being Mexican or start your own firm related to cultural heritage management as elsewhere. How is it possible for Mexico to develop real participation with different stakeholders if the INA is controlling everything? INA, just as a clarification, is the National Institute of Archaeology and History in Mexico.
Yeah, many thanks for the question. Of course, it's very interesting and it's hard to develop community development, organization, social awareness, and improve stakeholders when we have very, very important institutions. The INA, as Pamela mentioned, it's this institute that regulates all the patrimony and from all the country, from natural to intangible to but especially to archaeological. And of course, INA has a lot of influence in many cities and towns and archaeological sites. And for the case in Quetzalan, I'm not sure that INA has so big power, mainly only in the archaeological area from Quetzalan, but in the town, the people, they're the ones that have the power, because they have like a special committee to preserve the land and the environment. It's an ecological territorial management plan that with this committee. And this is a very, very important a group of people, with academics, with people from the female association, from other associations like Tosepan, with coffee plantations representatives, with patrimony representatives, with a lot of people. And this group, they are responsible to not to regulate, but to watch out what the INA and other public institutions are doing with the environment, are doing with the patrimony. And of course, the INA in other cities, it's very powerful, but at least in our state, it's really, really depressing how the INA lost a lot of, I don't want to say control, but lost in permits, in allowing things that maybe 20 years ago, you won't be, you won't allow it in historical downtown, historical centers, in natural areas, but of course, represent as well in a political agenda. and not always INA has the right, no? And it's really sad. But for our case study, it's really interesting to see how all the organizations, from the female, from the farmers, from the coffee plantation, from the patrimony, they are really working to protect Quetzalan against predatory groups or predatory also institutions or private companies. And I must add that Quetzalan, it's a really isolated place. It's in the middle of the mountains, so it's not really easy to access. And thanks to this isolation, it has been preserved, and not with all these pollution of modernizations and these public policies that only want to integrate the idea of Mexican indigenous town with the rest of the country. No? So that's why Quetzalan is very, very interesting to analyze.
Thank you very much, Melissa. I hope, Barbara, that she managed to answer your question. There is another question that I have for Melissa. There are many views on the national program Pueblos Mágicos, but I know that you have a different perspective of it, because it has been praised on an international level, but I would like to know how it works from the local perspective, especially after your experience with Quetzalan.
Yeah, thanks, Pamela. I just also want to clarify, Pueblos Mágicos, it's a federal program. It's little in English, magical towns. And this federal program was created 20 years ago, more or less, no, 15 years, more or less, to improve and to preserve the traditions, the Mexican architecture and culture from these typical Mexican towns that you normally see in movies and in Mexican telenovelas and like in touristic brochures, no? So the idea was very good, no? The original idea that to preserve tradition, to preserve culture, but only for touristic purposes, to improve, to boost tourism, national and international tourism. That was the original idea. And Quetzalan was one of the first towns that received this almost like certification that you fulfill a series of like a checklist that yes, you have traditional architecture, you have your own local language, you have your own local traditions, your local food, check, you are a Pueblo Mágico, welcome, no? And the government or the federal government used to give you money to improve like the historical center, some infrastructure, market, the local markets, traditions, etc. That was the idea and was very good. And many towns were like fighting. I want to be a Pueblo Mágico as well, because they received money from the federation. But what happened in the last 10 years, maybe 5 years, depending on in the area of Mexico, this program became like try to monopolize the tourism in Mexico and try to homogenize all to be like all the Mexican towns look the same, like traditional Mexican towns with the same facade, with the same urban image, with the same color, the same natives, indigenous groups. And I think this was not the purpose, not to just to like make a makeup, no, of facades and the traditions of the towns. And of course there was no more, and there was no money at all, no? So this program more or less stopped. So it's not, they are not giving any more money to the towns or to the small villages. And I really don't like it, because this is part of this homogenizing concept of culture, no? Or they are not considered anymore bioculture, and it's only for tourism exploitation. That if foreign tourists came to Quetzalan or to other town in Mexico, they will look like, oh yes, indigenous people, oh yes, and then this beautiful, colorful Mexican market, and it's not anymore of local identity. So that's why I have my reserves according to this program. The original idea was good, but now the implementation and the following years are not so good for neither for the environment, neither for the social development, neither for bioculture integration.
Thank you very much, Melly, for that very honest answer and very complete. I would like to contrast this situation with the Reconciliation Action Plan from the Sydney Opera House. Jude, how do you manage to make the implementation work in the end, especially when we contrast it with Pueblos Mágicos?
I guess just a lot of persistence and hard work. You know, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is that it's ever evolving. Like when we think about reconciliation action plans, it's not there's no end date like for these plans, which are frameworks for a set period of time, sort of 3 years. The job's never done. So it's about how can we continually reinvent ourselves to ensure that we're progressing, and there's lots of moving parts, I guess, lots of elements involved. You need to get leadership on board. You need to ensure that you've got diverse and inclusive voices. But it's, yeah, I guess just persistence, but then also seeing it that we're doing it for a reason. We're doing it for the future generations, so that that our children and children's will have the opportunities, and our environment and heritage will be looked after, which was a big theme for this year's, I guess, Indigenous week that we have in Australia, was about healing country and doing all.
Just give him a few seconds in case he comes back and can finish the sentence. Well, in any case, I think we are reaching the end of the session. I don't see any more questions from the public yet. I would like to thank our speakers for being here today and for sharing their wonderful experiences with us. I will also like to give the floor to you if you have any final comment. So I will just go in the order that I have on my screen. So please don't feel pushed if I just send you to the front. So the first one I have here on my right is Graham. Graham, do you have any final comment before we close the session?
I just think it's fascinating that you have pulled together such a diversity, not only of subject, but the management issues, the engagement issues. I look forward to how you pull all of this lot together during the course of the rest of this year and into next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. And it has been a wonderful experience working with you, and we look forward to more collaboration with Cultura. Hannah, do you have any comment?
Yeah, I want to thank you very much for this very interesting session and hear about all the different challenges all over the world. It was quite interesting to hear all about this and to get to know each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah. I know that you are right now at the visitor center, right? You have the most wonderful view of Bamberg over there. Thank you very much for joining. Elisa, do you have any final comment?
Thanks, Pamela. I'm really, really happy to see so punctual and diverse case studies. I really, really enjoy, and that's funny because I think or maybe it's called general culture, I knew about these case studies, but not so with these different perspectives and these introspections. So it was really, really interesting and also different from the other session that I was as well invited for the presentation of the case studies. And I'm really, really glad and happy to be part of this interesting group and sessions. And also the links were very interesting. I think are useful for all, not for the public, also for us. And well, that's the only thing I want to comment.
Thank you very much, Melissa. I have to say it has been quite an experience also for us. It's a learning process. And on a personal note, I want to say that it has been a pleasure to work with you for the last 15 years, I think. The next person in my screen is Ege. So I would like to open the mic for our coordinator.
Thank you so much, dear session organizer and dear case study proponents and colleagues. I don't know what to say except appreciation to you, and just echoing what everybody else has said. I mean, the diversity and the different kinds of unexpected good practice, and we're all learning all the time. So this is just an educational process for us. And what I can add is something a little bit more strategic, or it's about what to do now, or some more questions, some provocative questions that actually comes to mind when listening to what's been said today, which is all positive, and we're gathering together for good examples. But on the other side of the coin, the World Heritage Committee session is currently going on, and one of the priorities of the whole Our World Heritage Initiative, is to follow what's happening at UNESCO at the official level. And there are stories of controversy, of the outstanding universal value not being protected the way that advisory bodies or the communities expect. And so what is the real picture? I mean, is everything going down the drain? And sometimes there's a very depressing picture, but then no, we have good case studies, good things going on. And it's like, what is the real picture, and how can we replicate the good and maybe have a better picture of what's going on, and measure ourselves, and maybe develop better instruments of taking these case studies and helping for better capacity building across the world. I think that it's very valuable the way we're cross-pollinating. Different places, different typologies come together. So I'm just really stimulated, and I can go on and on, but you get the idea. And one last thing, I'm sharing a link with you with our World Heritage Voices. It's an online platform that the OWH initiative has created. You can register and post comments. I don't know if our case studies are any of the cases discussed at the session this year. Maybe there are a few. It would be interesting for you to share opinions and help with the way forward. Thank you. That's it. Thanks, Pamela.
Thank you very much, Ege. I will come back to OWH Voices in a moment before we close the session, but I'm very glad that you already shared a bit about that and shared the link. The last person in my screen, or one before last, is Herman. I really hope that you can hear us, that we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, and we
thanks a lot.
We're able to see you for a second.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, the case studies, and as Ega said, I think the advisory bodies should learn from this workshop on the best practices. The community and what the community do and what the community wants, that's what should be taken into account. I was glad to join you, and I'm happy to have learned something. The next few minutes I may leave you because I want to run. I don't want to be caught up by the curfew. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you very much, Herman. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Virginia, is there any comments that you would like to share?
Okay, thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Ege, and all the proponents. And well, it was an inspiring session. I think that highlight again that we are very grateful with your proponents. We couldn't do our job without your commitment. So that's what I want to highlight, that we are very grateful for your participation during all the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before closing, I would just like to, thank you for your participation, for your engagement. Thanks to our speakers for this wonderful good practices. Please follow us on Facebook, in Twitter and Instagram, and don't forget to go to our website to see our case studies and to register to all the events that we have planned for July, the OWH Sustainability Debate Month. Tomorrow we will showcase more good practices based on our case studies. This time will be on tourism and creative economy for sustainable heritage. On Saturday, we will discuss the global conclusions of the case studies assessment from a global approach. And yes, there are many other things happening in July, but we would like to acknowledge like the 44th session of the World Heritage Committee taking place until the 31st of July. A bit in line with what Ege was mentioning. In this context, we launched OWH Voices. This is an experimental forum that allows people and organizations to share information and viewpoints on the state of conservation of World Heritage sites. So OWH is, yes, it's an experiment that aims to serve as a learning platform to develop in the coming year new focus group discussions on World Heritage and to continue the follow-up of the work of the World Heritage Committee. All sessions in that forum are moderated by members of the OWH team. So please participate by registering to owhvoices.org as a forum member. So thank you very much. Remember that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and we look forward to seeing you in the many sessions to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.